Hello and welcome back to the port. I'm the Gav Major and this is a review of the Tier 4 British Tech Tree Heavy Cruiser HMS Hawkins, available as early access and will be fully researchable in the March 2021 patch. So HMS Hawkins was the lead ship of a 5-strong class of cruisers, named the Hawkins class cruisers. She was commissioned in 1919, however, probably extracting from how stellar they were. HMS Hawkins was placed into reserve twice, once in 1930 and again in 1935. However, in both cases, she was recommissioned in 1932 and 1939. Now, I couldn't find any kind of historical video that I could reference you to because they don't seem to be not talked about in common, and I didn't really want to spend too much of the game talking about the history because this is the World of Warships channel, not a history channel. However, I did find an amusing video from British Paper which showed when HMS Hawkins was arrived at Rio. Now Rio would have been almost like a second class station almost, and it's where the Graf Spee was engaged by the South Atlantic Squadron. And when you consider that the ships of the South Atlantic Squadron at the time was Exeter, Ajax and Achilles, and those would have then been brought back, and you kind of consider that you're sending Hawkins down there, Hawkins is definitely a second-rate ship. However, she's more than capable for engaging enemy freighters and converse raiders, like armed cruisers and things, merchant cruisers, armed merchant cruisers, I guess you could say. So very much a second-rate ship, but very much needed during the Second World War if you want to have your mainline units acting in the Atlantic and Mediterranean. So, as always, in comparison to the Tech Tree ships, HMS Hawkins, let's start off with the survivability. So when it comes to the survivability, you are looking at having the highest HP base of 32,200. You also have the highest HP pool of 41,160 thanks to the 2 repair parties that you come with base. Now you do have the best torpedo reduction as well, which is 17%, amusingly. Now in regards to the armour, best to go back to the port and have a look at the armour here. So the armour of the Hawkins, well, this I found to be quite a pleasant surprise. She actually has some armour. I mean, in comparison to the Devonshire, at least, I guess you could say, and even the Surrey. I was really quite surprised here. So, obviously, let's start off with, say, the superstructure. Superstructure is practically pretty much 10mm plating all over. Nothing special, in all honesty, so let's take that away. Let's then jump on to, say, the turrets. Because the turrets don't have barbettes, they're simply gun shields. And by being simply gun shields, they're mostly covered in 25mm plating, which means they're only really going to be effective up to 14-inch guns, so not really that amazing. However, considering the rest of the ships in the Tech Tree, pretty much on par. Now jumping on to the torpedo protection, it's just some 16mm plating on either side. The citadel, or the torpedo bulge, mostly protects from about centre of the bridge to the rear wash deck almost, where it starts to step down, so we can take that away as well quite nicely. Now this is the amusing one, the bow and the stern. Now the bow is mixed between 38mm plating, which is sufficient to ricochet pretty much any AP, and it's also got a little bit of 13mm plating, which is effective at doing absolutely nothing. So between these two, don't want to be taking stuff in through the nose. If you can, you probably want to be angling this thing as much as possible, so obviously that's something worth taking into account. It's exactly the same kind of situation with the rear. You don't want to be offering them straight down the rear, you want to be keeping it angled. So when you take into account what happens if you don't do that, well, you can see that if you do let them just punch you in straight through the rear, not looking at a lot of armour protecting you there, and the same with the front. Now obviously some of this is obviously the upper casement armour, which, well, on the bounce it's quite reasonable, enough to ricochet most AP shells, so we can take that away. But you can see that the citadel is ginormous. It is massive. It is thinly plated on both ends, and it's well above the waterline. Now it is got decent belt armour, but apart from that, hasn't really got a lot going for it. So I think when it comes to the Hawkins, I think your key bets almost are going to be keeping this thing nicely angled against anything that you think can hurt you, and offer them as much your armor belt angled as much as possible. And obviously, it's worth mentioning that that armored deck, it's not armoured, it is very thin, so you don't want to be taking plunging fire, you don't want to be taking any fire along the length of your ship. If you what you really want, it probably sounds bad, but you probably want to be getting in close enough that the shells are landing almost horizontally, and therefore maximising the chances of hitting the side armour. And also you probably want to keep it angled so that means you can bounce those shells coming in. So all in all, amusing, an interesting little surprise, I guess you can say. Well, let's go back to the game and see how we're doing. Well, welcome back. So let's crack on with the artillery. When it comes to the artillery, we do have 7 7.5-inch guns in 7 single gun mounts. However, due to their positioning on the deck, you're only really capable of getting 6 guns on target, and that's when you go broadside. And usually sometimes you're looking at 5 or 4 guns on target, simply just due to some of the restricted angles that some of these guns do actually have. So it's always worth noting that sometimes you do have to go quite broad in order to bring more guns on target if you so wish, although probably not always advised. Now, you do have a below average gun range of 13.6 kilometers. You have an above average reload though of 12.5 seconds, along with the second best turret traverse speed, which is 16.4 seconds per 180 degrees of rotation. Now, you do have the second best HE shell damage of 3050, and you do have the second best fire chance of 15%. Along with the third best AP shell damage of 4050. However, due to your reloading number of guns, you are looking at having the joint second worst HE DPM, the second worst AP DPM, and the second worst fires per minute. When it comes to the torpedoes, you do have 2 dual torpedo launchers, 1 per side. So basically, you have a launcher per side that only fires 2 torpedoes. Now, these have the fastest reload time per launcher, considering it's only 2 torpedoes, and that's 53 seconds. However, you do have an above average reload time per tube. Now, you do have the second highest torpedo damage and average detectability range for these torpedoes when they're closing in. You also have a below average range of 6 kilometers. Now, you do have an average speed on these torpedoes of 59 knots, I believe. Going on to the manoeuvrability, and you do have the slowest speed of 30 knots. You also have a below average turning circle of 640 meters. And you have the worst rudder shift as well, so basically your biggest issue you have is going to be your manoeuvrability. Now, when it comes to concealment, you do have the third best by sea and air, with that being 10.6 and 6.3 kilometers respectively. You also have an above average detectability when firing smoke due to the signature of the 8-inch guns. When it comes to your consumables, you do have 2 sonar, which will detect ships at 3.7 kilometers and detect torpedoes at 2.7 kilometers. This has a 90-second duration and 180-second reload. You also have 2 repair parties. These will heal 160 HP per second for 28 seconds, and then has a cooldown of 80 seconds. What that also means is that each repair party will be able to heal somewhere in the region of 4,480 HP. Now, this is getting a little bit precarious. However, we are able to wrap up a Omaha with high explosives. Gonna also try and get a volley of AP down onto the Danae as we turn out as the Kaiser closes in. Kaiser is in torpedo range, so we'll just loose off our 2 torpedoes. We should have switched to HE there though. Now, as always, down in the description will be the commander build and the modules. For the modules, I have taken aiming systems. It's that or secondaries really. And then when it comes to the commander, it's exactly the same as the Devonshire. We have taken Tennant with Ingenious, full speed ahead, Velocious, steer clear, fully packed, and inspirations are Muller and Azur, Baltimore. Looks like we got a torpedo hit on the Kaiser quite nicely there. Just got to bear in mind what's up ahead, Marblehead. Okay, that could be potential problems. You do have to see how wide we have to be. Oh, taking a nasty hit there. So, yeah, to keep yourself angled, you're only really looking at about 3 guns on target, which is a bit of a downside, I guess you could say. Although that fast torpedo reload speed is kicking in, it's just going to loosen them out. You never know, he might turn into them. However, we are going to have to start switching our attention to the Marblehead up ahead. Going to switch to armor-piercing rounds and see what we can yield out of this one. Although it looks like our destroyer should be able to seal the deal, which is quite nice. Gonna have to lead a bit more. That Marblehead's doing a bit more speed than I was expecting. Not quite finding the mark, quite a lot of overpens. Looks like our destroyer should have the deal all nicely sealed though, which is quite nice. And our destroyer wins the game for us quite nicely. Probably not the most impressive game, but I'm quite happy with that considering I'm reading out of a book. Only 41,000 damage, 46 hits on target, 1 torpedo hit, 5 fires, and 1 enemy destroyed. Coming second on our team, fair enough. The Kamikaze being the runaway winner there, getting himself 4 kills, really securing his flank there quite nicely. But you know what, I'll take the carry. And going to the economy, obviously making quite a nice profit. Obviously the ship service cost is only 17,000 in this case for a tier 4 ship. Without premium would have made 42,000 credits, and with premium I have made myself 72,000 credits. Well, if you have enjoyed this review, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you enjoy this kind of content, feel free to subscribe, and if you want to subscribe, I say thank you very much. You know what's down in the description, and until next time, I'm the Gav Major, and back to the port.
Hey, hey, clear the way, here comes the galloping Major. Get out of the way there, you fellas.